What's going on, my worked up weirdos? Sugar Pants back at it with more of the picturesque putrescence you can't get enough of. Today's congealed contribution is 1982's Forbidden World. I guess I mean mutant, apparently. Just another one of Roger Corman's highly entertaining attempts to cash in on the success of Alien. And according to director Alan Holzman, it's a movie compiled of recycled assets from previous Corman productions. Sets from Galaxy of Terror, space effects from Battle Beyond the Stars. Hell, the walls themselves are composed of discarded styrofoam takeout containers. But that's the magic of Hollywood. One man's garbage is Roger Corman's opportunity. And I say that as a lover of Corman's films. So let's get to that sleaze docket and find out what we're in for. We've got 6 dead bodies, 2 gooified bodies, numerous dead lab animals, 1 aggressively deactivated robot, 10 naked breasts, 2 naked butts, 3 naked bajingos, 21 cups blood, 12 cups slime, 1 cup monster spooge, 9 cups monster vomit, futuristic tech gibberish, monster face huggery, annoying foreshadow coughing, 1 chewed face hole, 1 handectomy, 1 monster impalement, 1 box cutter surgery, masturbatory yo-yoing, monster cockblockery, and 1 all-lady space shower. Our story begins with a robot that looks like a dollar store stormtrooper action figure sitting at the controls of a spacecraft traveling through, well, space. An alarm sounds and is replaced by beautiful classical music. Sam 104 goes to wake Mike from hypersleep, or space nap, or intergalactic Betty Bye, or whatever the fuck it's called in this movie. For some reason, he's having a strobe effect flash forward of events that haven't happened yet. The robot tells him they're under attack, and we get, honestly, not the worst space battle effects I've seen. Next sequence is just frantic button pushing and switch flipping. And for some reason, their space torpedoes look a lot like flamin' hot Cheetos. But it is enough to win the battle. Sam says that while Mike was asleep, they received new orders and have been diverted to the planet Zarbia. Apparently, there's been an accident at a high-security lab. Mike isn't very happy because he was supposed to be on his way home. Sam tells Mike to prepare for hyperspace, so...
Seatbelts, everyone! Please let this be a normal field trip. With a friend? No way!
Cruising on down Main Street, you're relaxed and feeling good. Next thing that you know, you see it. Octopus in the neighborhood, surfing on a sine wave, swinging through the stars. Take a left at Joey Teston, take your second right past Mars on the magic scuba. Alligator nostril, climb on the magic scuba.
Eventually, the spaceship lands on Zarbia, and we get a cat banging on a Moog keyboard to set the tone. Down on the base, the camera follows Dr. Barbara Glasser, one of the hottest scientists I've ever seen. And yes, an extended shot of her ass was integral to the plot.
But don't get donuts to hold with the soul. But don't get donuts to hold with the soul.
She's joined by Dr. Gordon Hauser to welcome Mike and Sam to the base, but Sam is immediately muted, thankfully. Gordon explains that they're using genetic engineering to create a new food source for humanity and that they're on a desolate planet because it allows them to take risks you couldn't on a populated world. That's when Mike literally runs into Tracy, and I gotta say, I love these movies where the science team only employs hot women. Gordon tells Mike they don't get a lot of new faces here, which I guess explains why all the women are soaking their panties as soon as they see him. The 3 pass through the UV decontamination and enter a lab covered in dead animals. I'm so glad we scrubbed up for the gore-soaked room. The team is joined by Dr. Cal Timbergen, who immediately lights up in an oxygen-rich environment. Mike suggests isolatory psychosis among the staff as the reason for the slaughter, but the doctors say it wasn't a staff member. Their experiments created an organism that is constantly changing its genetic form as it grows. We get a lot of techno-jargon, and Mike's immediate response is to kill it. Gordon says termination is not a solution, and we get the standard 80s anti-science, pro-military message that always ends up being right. Barbara asks Mike to let them study it for one night, but gives him the most obvious I need dick look I've ever seen outside of a porn flick.
I swear to God you could drown a toddler in my panties right now.
Mike agrees and is invited to join the crew for dinner. Before they leave, Jimmy comes in and Gordon tells him to let them know if anything happens with the beastie. We then get to enjoy the Blue Danube while Jimmy cleans up all the dead animals. Jimmy notices the monstrosity twitching and pulsing, so he calls Earl in security to tell Gordon the thing is waking up. Then Jimmy sticks his head inside the incubation chamber. And I'm glad we haven't spent any time on his character, because I actually want to see him dead after this. The communicator beeps and he takes his stupid head out of harm's way to talk to Gordon. While he's distracted, the thing takes a Taco Bell shit on the floor. Gordon sends Tracy down to the lab to make sure everything's okay. Back in the lab, the shit begins climbing the walls and Jimmy puts his face right next to it. It lunges at him and takes a good bite out of his face, and he thrashes around the lab for a while. And there's so much blood, it actually covers the security camera. But nobody's paying attention because it's fucking dinner time, y'all. And for some reason, security is where the dinner table is, and we're joining the crew just in time for a really sloppy strawberry shortcake dessert. We also find out that we're not going to get the black guy dies first cliche, as Brian is alive and well and asking, where's the whipped cream? But he's at least got all the blue milk he can drink. Hey, where have I seen that before? The lack of whipped cream leads us into a discussion of the food crisis, and Mike asks what the mutant has to do with that. Apparently, they spliced a bacteria with algae to make a food source that replicated itself so fast it could solve the crisis. But as always with these movies, something went horribly wrong. The scientists then try to tell the story of Annie, but Gordon angrily shouts at them to shut up. All we get is that Annie died. Storytime's interrupted by an alarm. Tracy finally made it to the lab to find Jimmy's blood-covered body and activated the alert. The doctors put Jimmy on a stretcher while Mike and security go looking for the creature. We get a good close-up of Jimmy's new face hole, and Cal diagnoses brain death, but the heart is still pumping, and he's technically alive. He says he can't work on him at the lab and moves him out of the room.
This is it, you goddamn dingwhopper.
Whoa, 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 whoa! That sounds just vaguely racist enough to be a slur of some kind. Huh. Actually, it's just future slang and nothing else. Okay, movie, continue. Cal wheels Jimmy's not dead body down the hallway and coughs the whole way down. Okay, movie, we get it. Cal's gonna die before the credits roll. Stop with your blatant foreshadowing. Sputtering like a lawnmower on bad gas, Cal finally makes it to the infirmary and steps away to have a smoke. That's when we get an awful lot of movement from underneath Jimmy's sheet. Cal scrambles around looking for his kit and runs into Barbara comforting Tracy. Cal says they have to tell Mike about Annie. The lady suggests Cal get some sleep, but he's got work to do. Barbara tells Tracy to get some sleep herself, and we cut to her bedroom just in time to see her change into her nightgown. But, uh-oh, something's watching her and got a little too excited. Hey, don't laugh. We all went through puberty and had control issues in our youth, too. That's when we get a photograph of Tracy and Jimmy. So I guess there was some emotional weight to his attack after all. Back at the lab, Gordon tells the crew if they can't find the creature, they're going to have to tear the whole station apart. And everyone's response to this is to go to bed. Mike reactivates Sam just long enough to make sure it's doing okay, then turns it back off. Barbara comes to her bedroom door wearing very little and gives Mike a little clunky sexy talk. But fortunately for her, Mike doesn't need much convincing. And who could blame him? Earl abuses his security clearance and turns on the cameras in Barbara's bedroom, then plays with his space yo-yo. Elsewhere, Brian is practicing his holophoner.
Your music's bad and you should feel bad.
Finally, a malfunction alert tears Earl away from Barbara's Pornhub channel and goes to check it out. He heads down the egg crate and takeout box hallway, and we get little flash cuts of the prior sex scene for some reason. Maybe this is the movie's way of suggesting he's distracted and not thinking about the task at hand? Then, in a really quick bit of character exposition, we see Earl take a memento from Annie's locker to put it in his own, and we see a nice photograph of him and Barbara. Ooh, the plot thickens. Or it would have if this wasn't so easy to miss on my first viewing. And then something happens, but I'll be damned if I can make anything out between the blurry camera work and the jump cuts of naked Barbara. Back in the infirmary, Jimmy's looking pretty rough, but I gotta say the effect looks fucking awesome. Tracy's alarm goes off and she mourns over a picture of Jimmy, then puts on some sunglasses and heads towards the sauna for a morning steam. She strips down in the locker room, but something's watching from the vents, and it follows her inside. She hears a noise and screams when a shadowy figure emerges. Oh, it's just Mike. Tracy tells him to get out more than once, but he sticks around anyway. Tracy then tells him he could use a steam and to get naked. Seriously, these women must be incredibly hard up for it. This dude ain't that cute, is he? Mike explains his scars and some monster goo falls onto Tracy's sunglasses. Suddenly a black toothy maw falls from the vent. Mike blasts it with his gun and rushes Tracy out the door. The noise brings Barbara, Gordon, and Brian in their robes. Gordon asks if he killed it, but Mike says it's still alive. Brian then wants to know why the two are dressed the way they are. Is there a dress code for the steam room of the future? The monster busts through the skylight and escapes to the planet's surface. Mike orders the crew to either join him on the hunt or to go to security to track it.
Let's go bag ourselves a ding whopper.
I guarantee you some 80s douchebag with a popped collar saw this movie and used that as his term for poon hunting. Barbara makes it to the infirmary where Cal is coughing up a storm. He says,
Changes itself, changes us.
And Jimmy doesn't look very human anymore, more like a pile of infected phlegm. Gordon, Brian, and Mike all suit up to go outside with Sam to track down the creature. Gordon warns Mike that staying outside for more than an hour is risky as the nitrogen in the blood gets all foamy, causing a euphoric state that makes you forget you're in danger. They pop the hatch and head out. Cal is running tests on whatever Jimmy has become when the pile starts dividing and reproducing. Basically, Jimmy has been transformed into a simple organism whose only task is to grow and divide. But why this is, Cal isn't certain. Tracy's monitoring the crew outside and tapping on the controls with a glow stick, I assume because it looks future-y. Hey, has anyone even wondered where Earl is? It seems weird that no one has thought to involve the security guy in the search. Oh, never mind, there he is. The crew also finds the monster has made another cocoon. Mike says it's their chance to kill it, but Gordon begs them not to. Some blue and purple pew-pews, and the cocoon falls from the rocks and bursts into flame. It was empty all this time. But during the fight, Sam is hit with a ricochet and falls to the ground. Gordon runs off towards the research center, and Mike takes off in his direction. They make it to the building and find a spindly-legged mouth waiting for them. Again, Gordon blocks the others from shooting it, and it smashes through a nearby vent. Gordon leans in for a look, and the monster gives him a chomp and drags his body through. Mike and Brian tell Tracy to bring up the facility schematics to track where the creature could be heading. She reads off the vent number, and Brian says,
Oh, baby, that's the control room.
Tracy meets up with Barbara and Cal, and the three evacuate that section of the compound. Mike and Brian come back in carrying a deactivated Sam, and the whole crew sees the creature has knocked out communications. Cal surmises the creature is quite intelligent as it has removed their ability to call for help, but hasn't affected life support systems. It's leaving them air to breathe to keep them alive. Barbara suggests that if it's intelligent, they should try to communicate with it. Mike says,
That's about the stupidest damn idea I've heard all day. No offense, Barb.
Brian brings up the cameras of the infirmary just in time to see the creature eating whatever the hell Jimmy has transformed into. And now we have our answer. It's turning humans into a simple and self-replicating food source. Coincidentally, the exact experiment the humans were working on. While Cal takes his time explaining this procedure, we get a creepy shot in the background. Something's climbing around, but no one's paying any attention to it. Turns out it's whatever's left of Gordon, who runs in and falls onto Tracy, covering her with his protein. No, seriously, that's what happened. And finally, Cal is instructed to tell Mike the whole story. The creature is a combination of bacteria and human DNA, specifically Gordon's DNA, and the whole thing was implanted into Annie's uterus. 2 weeks later, their experiment was born, killing her. Well, we've had enough monsters, blood, and exposition. Time for a shower scene. Barbara bathes Tracy while telling her she believes their only solution is to communicate with the creature. She believes it already has what it wants and that further violence is only making things worse. But she also says they'll have to do it themselves since the men shut down the idea before. So the ladies head towards the control room in their bathrobes while the men repair Sam and throw out ways to destroy the thing. Blast it, crush it, poison it, electrocute it, microwave it, acid. But all I can do is watch the adorable widow space ants. Oh, look at him. What a cute fuzzy wuzzy. Sorry. The ladies reach the control room and make their presence known to the creature. Barbara says she's unarmed and means it no harm. She asks for a sign that it understands her and it raises its claw and plays some music. Feeling it safe, Tracy enters the room, and Barbara wonders if the creature has tapped into the computers. She moves to the keyboard and begins texting the beast. Surprisingly, the creature responds.
Shall we play a game?
Barbara asks if the two species can coexist, and the monster answers by calmly extending a tentacle and then violently impaling her to death. Now, I'm not 100% on this, but I think the movie's suggesting the monster didn't have to make an entry wound, if you catch my drift. Which makes this scene a lot more horrific, especially when we get this shot of Barbara laying on the floor with the tentacle still in place. Tracy runs screaming from the control room and fills the rest in on what happened. Mike and Brian grab their guns and run off while Cal stays behind and asks Sam for some information. Using Gordon's genetic material, he makes the worst peanut butter parfait, and Sam asks how long Cal has had cancer. Cal asks,
How did you know?
Because your entire performance has been speaking lines between coughing fits, you jackass! Cal turns Sam off and injects the material with his own blood, and it begins foaming.
The Dr. Dreadful Drink Lab. Makes lots of gross things that taste great. Magic liquid and care for a putrid potion?
Tasty.
The Dr. Dreadful Drink Lab makes cobs of gross things again and again. Batteries not included. It's totally dreadful!
Tracy, Mike, and Brian run to the control room just in time to see Barbara's body dragged into the cocoon. Mike goes to blast it, but Brian tells him it's set up on life support and he could kill everyone. They decide to try repairing the downed communications to call for help. Cal runs into the infirmary and blasts away the food source, then joins the others in the control room to tell them he knows how to kill the creature once and for all. But before he can tell them, the cocoon spews some phlegm all over Brian's legs and... I don't know, he's electrocuted? Cal runs up to sacrifice himself, and the monster shoves him away. Mike picks Cal up and carries him back to the genetics lab. On the way, Cal tells Tracy to get his morphine from his room, aka force the last surviving lady to split from the group. Great plan! Can't see it backfiring at all! In the lab, Cal tells Mike that he has cancer and instructs him to cut out his tumor to feed it to the creature, as he's certain that will kill it. Mike says he's not a surgeon, but Cal says it doesn't matter as the cancer is too far gone for him to be saved. Tracy finds Cal's morphine, but Gordon gets one last grope as his gooey hand is pulled from the wrist.
See how that just falls off the bone? That is money right there.
Back in the lab, Cal says they can't wait for Tracy to get back with the morphine and tells him to start the surgery immediately. I don't know if a box cutter is the best surgical instrument, but whatever, it will do the job. And by job, I mean entertain the gore hounds watching. Out in the halls, the creature has suddenly developed omnipresence. She runs down one hallway right into the creature, then turns around and runs into him again. We then get to watch Mike fish around in Cal's torso like it's the end of their third date. He pulls out a mass of tissue and begins cutting, which just has to be excruciating. Tracy finally makes it through the sterilizers and gives Cal the morphine just as the surgery ends. Great timing, Trace! The creature busts through the door and starts wrecking up the place. Mike runs towards it and is knocked back by its many tentacles. Sam runs in to help, stabs it with a needle, but is split in two. Finally, Mike sees his opportunity and jams the tumor into the toothy maw. Immediately, the creature begins violently puking all over the place and drops dead. We then get a strobe effect jump cut montage of the entire movie. You know, just in case you needed a reminder of what you literally just watched. One last tracking shot around the lab to see all the gore and flesh laying about, and roll the credits while we listen to the holophoner once again. Yeah, now that's a movie. Blood and guts, TNA, and a plot that never takes a break. Needless to say, I enjoyed this one immensely. Alan Holtzman directed this superbly sickly schlock, and it was his first time in the director's chair. He's gone on to win 2 Emmy Awards and a Peabody for his work. Originally, Forbidden World was supposed to be more humorous, but during a screening, Roger Corman was so upset by a viewer laughing, he smacked the poor guy. Later, he ordered the movie to have about 6 minutes of the more humorous footage removed. Our brave space cowboy Mike was played by Jesse Vint, who has been acting for almost 50 years, including parts on Little Big Man and Chinatown. Sultry Dr. Barbara was played by June Chadwick, and you might recognize her as the Yoko Ono-esque character Janine Pettibone on This Is Spinal Tap. She also starred as Lydia in 19 episodes of V. Ray Oliver played Brian, but he also starred in a little movie called Child's Play as the voodoo man Dr. Death. And then Jimmy, our first casualty of the movie, was played by Michael Bowen. He's been in Valley Girl, Night of the Comet, Private Resort, Iron Eagle, Jackie Brown, Kill Bill 1 and 2, 2004's Walking Tall, 7 episodes of Lost, 2009's The Last House on the Left, Django Unchained, and 7 episodes of Breaking Bad. Not too bad for the idiot who stuck his head in an infected incubator. And before I go, I feel it kinda necessary to help aid in the misinformation, or at least what I find. While doing some research on this movie, I came across a couple of places that mentioned that the creature from this feature made its way into Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens. And it took me some time to figure out what the heck they were even talking about when I found this cast photo. And at first, I kind of thought, yeah, that resembles our monster. But then I found another cast photo, and no, it's not even close. So, sorry horror nerds, Forbidden World does not take place in the Star Wars universe. And thus concludes another episode of Eerie Entertainment eviscerating our every emotion. So until I greet you again for another sticky story, this is your old pal Sugar Pants. See you in your dreams.